Did you miss me? Because I'm back. Ira, take it away.
Welcome to League One Fun, presented by the Beautiful Game Network and brought to you by Roughneck Scarves and Golden Gold Press. Please subscribe, rate, and review us on your favorite podcast app. Jason, welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you. It's good to be here. I know that everyone had a sigh of relief last week when I wasn't able to make it, but guess what? Like an ex-girlfriend, I'm back. I'm right in the DMs trying to get you guys back.
Well, I two-timed with you. You introduced me to Elliot, and now I'm with Elliot sometimes.
That's the loyalty I get around here. I see how it is.
There you go. So, the last couple of shows, toward the end of the show, I noted that I asked for some scarves for my birthday, courtesy of Roughneck Scarves. And I have a funny feeling that this package that I just got in the mail the other day, it's from Tormenta FC in Statesboro, Georgia. For those of you on YouTube, you can see it here. And that was bad audio right there. I'm going to see what's in it, and let's start pulling some stuff out. So firstly, in fact, it is a scarf. It is a Tormenta FC scarf. I'm going to wear this proudly tonight. Very nice. Thank you so much to the good folks at Tormenta for me. Thanks. I appreciate the birthday wishes. And here we go. We got Tormenta FC. The pros are here. It's a catalog with information about the club and about how its founding and bios of all the players. Very nice. I'm going to share this with my kids as well when we watch the matches this coming weekend.
It's good to see. Happy birthday, Ira. I'm glad you are selling yourself the right way. As a neutral journalist, I tend to show all teams love, and I cannot be bought with material items.
Well, unlike you, I can. Okay. Let's go to the news. There's lots of news this week. Let's start finally with a very quick recap of the U20 World Cup. The U.S. U20s lost to Ecuador 2-1. Keep in mind that the Ecuador were the South American champions. They made it very far. They continue to play very well. We only had one USL League One player who got any time in this match, and that was Abubakar Keita on Richmond Kickers on loan from the Columbus Crew. He didn't play great. I mean, defensively, he was fine. I think defensively, neither of the goals was his fault. He had some very nice defensive challenges, but he made some bad passes, Jason. And that's not going to cut it on the national team under Berhalter for sure.
And that seems to be the Achilles heel with him, right? He especially when he's in pressured situations. We saw the bad back pass earlier this year in the league. And I think that takes experience and time. Unfortunately, though, when you're playing for the national team and you're in these positions and you're in the camp, you don't have that much time, right? Like any moment you're playing on the big stages, you have to impress. So, it's unfortunate. Like you said, though, he played well defensively. So it is something that I feel like he'll get better with more experience. But it's going to have to be at a faster rate because it's something that, sticks out, and you can't have that. And especially when you're already playing in U20s, you might not get a chance to move on and play for the Olympic team or, even the Gold Cup team or whatever preliminary roster in the future.
The other player who could have played from USL League One was North Texas's and tonight at least FC Dallas's Brandon Servania. He had played most of the other matches, either off the bench or as a starter in kind of the number 6 defensive midfield role. And quite frankly, given how the game was played and given how it went, I feel like maybe he could have started or at least should have come in as a second half substitute and might have been able to hurt Ecuador some. And, do you have any thoughts on Servania and maybe why he wasn't on the pitch that night?
Yeah, I understand. So I don't know about him starting, but I would have liked to see him as a sub, coming in late and just trying to make something happen. I understand with Soto, and you have the guys with the hot hand going into it, so you keep that going. But when there's chances, and the U.S. was in this game, right? It wasn't like Ecuador just from the get-go went in there. They had their first goal was a golazo, right? And so, but the U.S. responded, and they were in it, but it was just one of those things to where you needed a spark, and I think that's where he would have been at his best if you could just come off the bench and make something happen.
Yeah, it could have been that midfield destroyer. Okay, moving on to other news. So this was something you picked up on in the Twittersphere, I believe, Jason.
Yep.
So why don't you talk a little bit about this rumor that there might be some NPSL teams coming to USL 2 with aspirations to join USL League One?
Hell yeah, brother, MPSL or whatever y'all be saying. So John MLTX on Twitter, he has a lot of great content on lower league soccer. Had a rumor about NPSL teams switching to USL 2 in 2020 and then going from League 2 with the hopes of going pro in League 1 in 2021. And so what he's saying is so far he's hearing it's 8 and it might reach as far as 12. And he's going to assume he rumored that these announcements are going to start trickling in August. So this is big because we've already got rumors of, the championship side. Well, not even rumors, right? We know championship sides are going to come down. And so now if they're, in 2-3 years, they're planning on having NPSL teams come up to League One from League Two, this looks like it's going to be a big league.
Have they? Were there any rumors of what teams might be interested in potentially moving? Like who are these 8 to 12 teams? Do we know?
Yeah, no, I didn't see of any rumors. I did want to ask, are there specific teams that you like? I would love to see, for instance, Baltimore or Fort Worth come down because those are just big markets, like especially when you look at like television markets, like Baltimore is always up there. Norfolk, Virginia is always up there. So having them come down and having a pro team, I think would be great for the league. I'm going to assume Chattanooga and Detroit would not do it. I think that they would probably rather jump the NISA before succumbing to USL's rules and sanction. But yeah, so there's really just rumors right now. There's no specific teams, but yeah, let us know what teams you think you would like to see make that jump. And it's interesting to see, that they are deciding to do the League 2, League 1 approach as opposed to going to NPSL Pro.
Yeah, I agree. It'll be interesting to see if any of them do, and if so, which ones. Just given that, there's a lot of the teams that seem to be clustered in certain areas that already have a lot of soccer or are in reasonably close proximity of either an MLS team or a USL Championship or League One team. So yeah, some of the perpetual good teams in NPSL, like FC Motown, is in Morristown, New Jersey. So that's definitively Red Bulls NYCFC territory, and others are like Philadelphia Lone Star. I actually, someone in my current coaching class plays for Philadelphia Lone Star, and they want to go to NPSL Pro, but the Union's there, and the Union's playing well, and it's hard to imagine having some of those teams join USL. So it has to be some teams maybe that are well outside of the kind of the footprint of existing franchises.
I think FC Buffalo would be a great one, especially with the proximity to Toronto. Having
and Lansing. Lansing's not that far either.
Right. Really. Yep. So having more teams up in that way. And then I think Duluth might be a fun one too if they wanted to try to make that jump. They've got a great organization. That's another one to where they can have a nice rivalry with Ford and be in that area and kind of spread that proximity and spread the soccer in that area. So I think they're another one to look at. That would be cool to see that jump.
All right, and moving on, you put in here talking about Ricardo Pepi in the U.S. Open Cup, but Brandon Savagna is there too. So you had 2 starters tonight in the U.S. Open Cup for FC Dallas. They're playing as we speak, so we won't have any kind of recap right now of that. But both Brandon Savagna starting as a number 6 and Ricardo Pepi. On the team sheet that I saw, it said that he was playing as a number 10, although I find that hard to believe.
He was playing up top, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say he had to be. But, that's great that those guys got called into the first team. It wasn't great necessarily for North Texas today when they played in their league game, and we'll talk about that a little later. But, good stuff for these guys. I mean, this is the point of USL League One having these 2 teams for the senior franchises, right?
Yeah, and this is this is a way for these players to get into that MLS experience to see how they match up, see how their USL Championship experience, see how they match up, and the physicality. And I think moving forward, there's a good opportunity for those players to get that kind of MLS USL Championship competition to see where they match up, right? Like Pepe can dominate this league all he wants, but then maybe if he's dealing with more physical center backs or more athletic center backs, it's tougher for him to make those runs and get behind them. But I think a lot of FC Dallas fans are super excited to see that not only is he on the team, but starting for them in the cup. And with the 2-0 lead, if they move on, I'll be curious to see if he makes the bench or starts, when they do play an MLS side. And I think that's when you're going to get a lot of attention from the U.S. national team fans and MLS teams. And I think that's when it's going to be Pepe's time to shine.
Yeah. More mentions on the Scuffed podcast for sure for him.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we have to remember, and I just want to remind our listeners that one of the reasons why the two teams, and even teams that are, our two teams, even if they don't play in the same geography, like an FC Tucson, for example, they don't play in the U.S. Open Cup because their rosters are not owned by them. The rosters are owned by the senior team. So it's because of moves like this where Pepe now will actually be what they call cup tied to FC Dallas. So even if Pepe this year went to another team that's still in the U.S. Open Cup, like if NYCFC go through and he wound up there, or even on loan, he wouldn't be allowed to play in cup matches because he's now cup tied to FC Dallas. So Guam is advancing through World Cup qualifying with one of their players plays in USL League One. You want to talk about that a little bit, Jason? I was not able to see any of these games.
So Greenville keeper Dallas J. They helped Guam move on. They won 5-0. Their last game, and in the first game they lost, I believe, 1-0. But if you go on my Twitter, I had a couple of clips up, and Dallas J was just making some incredible saves and kept them in that game. And yeah, it's exciting, right? The USL League One players in these qualifiers, being big parts of their teams too, right? It's not just a bench player. It's not just somebody that's subbing in. This is somebody who is critical for their team's success. And, shout out to Dallas J doing it.
And that's not the only international activity going on. We have the Gold Cup is about to kick off here in the United States, and those rosters have come out. There were a number of USL Championship and USL League One players who were called up to those rosters, including TFC2's Noble. I always pronounce his name wrong, but Okello was called up for Canada. North Texas's Baiku Bisatanthi. Is that how
I think we should just have a segment called Ira tries to pronounce player names, and I'm here.
I can't pronounce Ira sometimes, so no one take any offense, please. Lansing's Nathan Lewis was called up for Trinidad and Tobago. So not a big surprise there. I think Lewis has played really well for them.
And there was a certain someone who was called up to the preliminary roster for Haiti, and they did not choose him for the final 23-man roster. And that certain someone had a hat trick in 27 minutes today. So I wonder if he is A, playing with a little chip on his shoulder, and B, if Haiti is having some second thoughts and regrets about not keeping him around.
I wonder if someone's going to get a little injury or hamstring just so he's called in, because that is one of the reasons. So which one of these three, at least the three that we know are going to be on the rosters, do you think will have the biggest impact for their team, or actually see the field? Like, I don't think Noble is going to see the field for Canada, or I'd be very surprised if he did.
So I actually think it's funny because he's played the least probably out of these guys in USL League One, but I think Nathan Lewis is going to be the one who has the chance to be the most impactful. And so, with the Soca Warriors right now, they don't have anyone to really score. They don't really have anyone producing offense. Defensively, they look good. The midfield looks good, but they haven't had a scorer. Kenwin Jones retired last year, 2 years ago. It seems like forever ago now. And they really haven't had anyone to step up and score. And so if you can get people like Keem Highland playing in the midfield and holding the ball off, and Nathan Lewis and Levi Garcia can make those runs on the side, I think Nathan Lewis could be a spark offensively for Trinidad and Tobago, and could be something that he needs to for his playing, right? Maybe that's for Lansing. They go, okay, we need to start getting him involved more. Maybe this is the confidence that he needs to get on the field more.
Do you know who's in Trinidad and Tobago's group, Jason?
Yep, it is the U.S., Guyana, and Panama. And right. I know this.
I guess the question for Trinidad and Tobago is, how does Nathan Lewis stack up against the U.S.? I find it hard to believe that he's going to do great against some of our center backs unless we put out a really second string team.
I don't know. Watching this past weekend, it seems like I might be doing okay against the U.S. defense. I'm just
Well,
saying.
well, I guess the question that I'm really trying to ask is, when you look at Nathan Lewis, how does he end up doing against teams like Panama and Guyana? We don't know, but presumably they'll be the weakest team in the group. But
Well, don't sleep on them though. Guyana is probably the best that they've been in the past decade. So that's why this is easily my favorite group. And I think you can't go into there thinking like, oh, the U.S. should no. I think this is a group to where the U.S. needs to be careful. Like this is a group that they can very well end up with 3 draws and just be kicking themselves for not taking advantage.
or the U.S. drops 13 on Trinidad in just for spite.
Wow, is that what we're doing? Why didn't the U.S. go to the World Cup? Because they dropped 13 on Trinidad? Is that what happened?
I know. I
Hmm.
was kidding, and I was trying to make fun of our men's team versus our ladies who were
Yeah,
playing in the World Cup in France.
who are actually scoring and
And
playing defensively.
yeah, that was almost mean. Notice I said almost. Okay, so the Chattanooga Red Wolves did acquire Daniel Navarro from El Paso Locomotive on a short-term loan with an option, actually. So
I like that.
if Navarro plays well, he could potentially wind up joining the Red Wolves. Jason, what do you think about this kind of this kind of activity? It's nice, in my opinion. It's nice to see USL League One teams looking for talent and kind of trialing them basically.
Yep, and I'm hoping that this is the first of many, right? We were saying with Chattanooga, they need something, right? That midfield, it just looks incomplete. There's no creativity. Uefa is easily their best player, but he can't be central defense and be offensive as well. So I think, bringing Navarro in allows them to kind of move around the midfield and try things out. He's a defensive midfielder, but I think he's also can play center back. And so, yeah, I think that these are the kind of short-term loans you want to see, right? And especially with Navarro's not getting any playing time, with his current team in the championship, this is exactly what you would want, get players up for El Paso that aren't playing, get players for, these independent teams and championship that aren't playing, and give them a try. And like you said, with the option at the end, that's perfect, right? Because then if you form a relationship with him and he's good for the team and there's chemistry and cohesiveness, then you keep him. And now he's found a new community.
Might also be a way for championship teams to say, hey, we can, this loan idea, even if there's not a purchase option, but even if there's this idea that you can loan a player for a month or two just to get them some playing time before you wind up maybe needing them to make a run into the playoffs. I think that makes a whole lot of sense. And I think specifically for Chattanooga, I agree with you. I think having Navarro maybe in the back as a number 6, that allows Ualfe to maybe move forward more, because he's had to stay back for them a lot. And I agree with you. It's hard to get the ball up to Zayed and Beatty when when basically you don't have anyone in the midfield willing to and significantly able to push the ball forward.
Yep, and Chattanooga again, I think last time I checked was still worst or second worst in the league at winning the balls in the midfield. They're just not winning those duels, and if they are, they're not going anywhere with it because they're winning it so far back. Pressure is then on them, and they have to back pass it to the keeper.
Okay, well, let's go down to the results. We're in week 11, 11/28 to the season, almost halfway there, Jason.
Almost.
In a couple of weeks we'll be halfway there. League One is not taking a break for the Gold Cup, so there will be matches every week for the next couple of weeks. Lots of soccer, summer of soccer here. Okay, the first match was on Friday night. OCB scored 2 on forward Madison, who got 1 very late. Rafael Santos scored in the 23rd minute. Tiago De Souza scored in the 63rd. And then Brian Bement scored in the 89th. Madison did have a lot of chances. They were really pushing at the end. I have to say, Santos's goal, was from a press, and, it was a really interesting chip over the keeper to the back post. I don't know, Jason, you're our resident goalie. Was the keeper out of position, or was that just such a good chip?
No, I think it was just a good shot. I think even in position, you'd have to perfectly time it, fully extend. I do think he was maybe not out of position, but caught off guard, right? Because when you watch D'Souza steal the ball, he literally steals it, and then Santos just one touches it into the goal, as opposed to taking it and dribbling forward with which what a lot of players would do, and then try to cross it in. So yeah, it probably caught him off guard, but I do like props to Santos. That was just an amazing goal.
Yeah, it was certainly a great shot. The other thing about this match that I found interesting was I'm not sure. Like, if you would have watched the match and didn't know the score and you just didn't see the goals and you say, "Hey, who deserved to win this match?" I think maybe Forward did. Forward had it. Forward didn't have all the possession for sure, but they had 5 shots on target. They had a number of chances created. Forward had 13 shots to OCB's 8. OCB had to make 21 clearances. I mean, 21 clearances in a game is not a little, right? Like Forward, on the other hand, only had 7. So, you basically, the ball was in dangerous positions quite a lot for Forward. They just kind of couldn't score, right? Which has been one of their problems. When Don Smart and Paulo Jr., they looked dangerous, but there just wasn't that clinical finishing that they've had in a few of their other games. They've been inconsistent in the front line.
Yep, and at times would be invisible, right? Like Don Smart, he would come with a shot on goal, but then would be invisible for the next 20, 30 minutes. Paulo Jr. was running end to end like a madman trying to make things happen. But, even though, yes, like Orlando, 21 clearances, props their defense too, because they made a lot of good saves that prevented Forward from scoring, right? And so bad luck with Forward always hitting the goalpost. I think they've easily hit the goalpost more than anyone. But when you watch D'Souza, he had like 4 steals that were consistently on Forward attacks. Bank, who did a great job pivoting, just had a trouble finishing because he would have people like Mendoza, who was just always in the way. Mendoza didn't do much, but was just always in the way, and had a fantastic header when Banks had a bicycle kick that, so he knocks that away. He was also in a way during a counterattack for Forward. So Mendoza, I think Orlando, they don't have the greatest defensive team, but they're doing a great job of setting their players where they need to be. But I also think that, Thiago D'Souza just killed it that game. Yeah. I think he's the reason why they won. A goal, assist, 4 breakup plays, like I was saying, all on attacks. Was drawn, he drew 2 yellows, which is important because Forward, when they did start getting momentum, it slows down the game. And then he was efficient offensively with 79% passing in the opponent's end. And he easily ran more than anybody that game except for maybe Paulo Jr. So that's easily my player of the week. Shout out to Thiago D'Souza, who I think now he scored tonight. This is his 4th game in a row where he scored a goal.
It's been a few. It's at least 3. So
yeah,
so I can't remember a couple of weeks ago, but yeah,
he's been doing it.
Yeah. The other thing about the defense is, shout out to Austin Amir. I mean, he, you mentioned the back line of OCB, but I think the thing in this particular game, right, against Forward, was Austin Amir was kind of all over the place in, breaking up plays. And even when he didn't actually get a steal or an interception, he was able to guide players out of the runs that they were making and allowing the center backs or the outside backs the time to get the ball and to get into better positions and to make recovery runs when necessary for the outside backs. So,
but before we move on, can we talk about D'Souza's goal? Because that was literally some playground. Hey, you're the fastest person on the field right now. I'm going to, Serginho just said, I'm going to launch this ball. You're going to take whoever's on the side one-on-one. And he did. He just went one-on-one for a 60-yard race, ran down, had a great in and out, and then shot it. Yeah. And it's just an incredible solo effort from Thiago, who was already running like a madman all game. But then to do that, and then to consistently, steal during big moments, like there's one in the 75th minute where he had a big steal. He just really was an exciting player to watch. And I think that Orlando City should be taking notice right now and maybe thinking about calling him up for a couple games to sub in.
Okay, so moving on, we had Toronto Football Club 2 scored 3 goals on Lansing Ignite. And Weston Shelton, I'm sure, is putting his hand over his face right now and dropping his head and saying, "Oh."
It must be nice to have a job that conveniently saves you from appearing on the show after your team loses 3-0. I wish I had a job like that. Wow.
So the goals were in the 29th minute by Hundal from Serbly, although Bunk Anderson had an MLS assist. Basically, Bunk Anderson, this was off a set piece. Bunk Anderson was up front, another center back. He's up there. He crosses the ball from the right to the back post, where Serbly heads it across for Hundle just to tap in. I mean, it was, quite frankly, it was just poor defending on the back post that really caused that goal. I mean, there was nothing much that anyone could have done about Hundle, given where the ball came in. And then the 80th minute, the next goal was in the 80th minute. Lansing had a bunch of chances actually in between there. They easily could have tied it up, but TFC looked dangerous the whole game. But in the 80th minute, Bunk Anderson gets his third goal of the season. Is there any other center back that has 3 goals? My guess is not, because I mean, considering that most of the people on the leaderboard for goals in the season only have 4 or 5. With the exception of Pepe, they 3 goals is going to put him up there, I'm sure. And plus, it's only in 10 matches. I mean, there's a lot of strikers who don't have 3 goals in 10 matches for sure.
Right.
And then Jordan Perusa just puts it away. He came on as a substitute late, scores in the 90th minute. Tariq Mohammed just put Perusa through, and shimmies the leave a defender. And you know what I love about this goal was, if you watch Perusa, he fakes to the inside on his right foot. I couldn't quite tell if it was a soul roll or if he just kind of tapped it with the inside of his right foot to go left, and he broke the ankles of the defender. Defender's literally sitting on his butt in the middle of the penalty area, nothing he could do, and Perusa puts it home.
I think this game could have been 6-0 if Perusa started. I even tweeted. Yeah. I don't know why he didn't. I think he's easily probably the second best clinical finisher behind Pepe. Anytime he gets the ball in the 18, you have a feeling if he has space, it's going in.
And if it's not him, he's laying it off to someone, as we'll talk about a little bit later on today's game, because my lunch break was an extra 45 minutes. Sorry, because I had to watch the rest of the North Texas TFC2 game. But Lansing didn't do badly, but they didn't have the ball in the final third enough, right? Which was kind of strange, because they're usually one of the pressing teams, right? They're usually one of the teams that goes out and presses. Do you think in this game, Jason, it was TFC doing a really good job passing around the press, or was it just Lansing not being defensively sound today?
Yeah. So, and it's weird because when you look at Xavier Gomez, I think he won like 11 of his 14 duels in the midfield, which is crazy. So it wasn't like Lansing wasn't getting the ball in good places. I think Toronto just pressed extremely well and put so much pressure on them that it was pressing Lansing and then making mistakes. And you can just tell Lansing wasn't able to get their passes together. So I think Nick Moon created the most chances with 3, but that's when he's already in the final third and throwing in a cross or just taking the shot himself. Whereas I don't think there was any buildup. I don't think there was really any groove for Lansing to get into, because Toronto, especially in the midfield and being physical, you look at Tariq Mohammed, he might be one of the most physical players in the league. He just does not let you get into any kind of a groove. And so, yeah, I don't think that Toronto allowed Lansing to get into any kind of a consistent passing spree, and I think that showed. And Lansing definitely had chances, right? So it's not like
11 shots, 3 on target.
Yep. Yeah, so they had chances, but I think Toronto's attack was just too much for them to deal with, right? Like, it's just like attack after attack after attack, and then when your center back is all the way forward making plays for you, there's issues, right? Like you can't allow for a center back to be in there sending in crosses in the middle of the box scoring goal. It's just, you can't allow that to happen.
So Lansing knew that they had some problems attacking, and at halftime, when it was 1-0, they actually brought in a 4 who hadn't started. They took him off the bench. He came in at halftime, but even he wasn't great. I mean, he completed 9 of 12 passes. 12 passes and a half for someone in his position. He should have probably double that. He had no shots, and he only helped create 1 chance. So he wasn't as effective. And, I think that just shows how well TFC was able to close down, Lansing's attack. And I agree with you. Their pressing was very, very solid, and certainly much more solid than it was for the first 27 minutes of their match on Wednesday morning. We'll talk about in a minute.
Yeah, and I do think that with Lansing, I don't see the offensive game plan, right? Like, if you're going to press and get the ball, okay, but then what, right? Or do you have Xavier Gomez up there and he keeps having to go back so much? He's not up there to be able to create anything offensively. And I think that's where, and you can watch, there was 2 offside calls for Lansing early, and Nick Moon was just so frustrated because he's like, I just need the ball quicker. And I don't think that Lansing is equipped right now in the midfield to have that person who can get the ball, turn in one touch, and send Nick Moon through. Because I do like what they're doing with Nick Moon. He is playing more in that forward position as opposed to being a wing back. I do think that he, has no hesitation to shoot. He's a good scorer, but they have to give him that service. And I don't know right now who can do it because Xavier Gomez is playing way too far back.
Yeah, they'll have to figure that out, and it'll be interesting to see if they do this weekend because there's some important matches that are happening this weekend as well. Mm-hmm. So the next match, this one ended 0-0, but it was, I thought, a reasonably entertaining 0-0. So there were a few matches this season that I can say were not entertaining 0-0s. I think this one was one of the more interesting 0-0s. So this was FC Tucson 0 versus Richmond Kickers 0. Richmond Kickers make the farthest trip they'll have to make all season out to FC Tucson. I think one of the stories that we have to consider here is the 2 attacking subs were 2 of the people who had been very active for their clubs. In Delgado for Tucson, he got 20 minutes. Hughes for Richmond, he got 30 minutes. Both people that we've talked about on this podcast many times. And neither of them had a lot of touches. I mean, they didn't even have the amount of touches that they might have in 10 minutes had they started. And neither looked dangerous, and they just didn't do their job basically as subs. Otherwise, I mean, this was a pretty even match. Possession was 50-50. Passes were 425 to 448. Shots were 9-11. Each team had 2 shots on target. They each had 20 tackles plus or minus a couple, and but there were even all the fullbacks in this game. Just to show you how little attacking there was down the flanks, all the 4 fullbacks that were in this match only had 8 crosses attempted.
Yeah.
Only 8, so on average it's 2 per fullback. That's not a lot.
And a part of that though is it was definitely an open game. And what happened was Cox from Tucson and Maxi Rodriguez from Richmond both just consistently were stopping plays, right? So as soon as it would open up, they'd come in. Maxi was all over, had to use a yellow card to stop a counter. That was important because that's what Tucson's bread and butter is, right? They want to play open. They want to play back and forth. So Maxi did what he had to do, and I thought he had a great game. But let's talk about these goalkeepers because I think that's the key to why this stayed 0-0. Both, had some spectacular saves. Ejumadu continues to just be the fastest player off the line in this league. And like I said, he might make a mistake 1 out of the 10 times he does it, but I'll take that, right? I take a goalkeeper who's confident in his decision making and doing it. Probably had the save of the week after Joey G had a misheader on Joey G after there was a misheader in the back. And I think in the beginning Tucson pressed early and Richmond just had no ideas what to do offensively, and that set the tone, right? You had
that's what keeps happening to Richmond, right? When Richmond tries to possess and tries to build up, if you press them like some teams do very effectively, certainly Lansing did early on, but Tucson did in this game. It's hard for them to seem to get their rhythm. Once they get that rhythm, they seem to be able to pass around the press. But if they don't have that rhythm initially, it's hard. It seems hard for them to get into it.
And Jamil Cox stopped like 4 attacks within the first 20 minutes single-handedly, and he was doing that all game. So I think he was a big reason as why Richmond couldn't get a feel and get a groove for their attacking. I thought Mwape had a good chance in the 49th minute. A player that definitely deserves shine is Akwe. I think he played out of his mind, has some really important one-on-one interceptions, and including that acrobatic game-saving header, in the 90th minute. Yeah. So he played out of his mind. But it's scary to think what would have happened if he didn't, right? And then this game, Jongba hits the post in the 68th minute. Richmond should feel good about saving those points. I know you never want to feel like, oh, well, we're playing at home for a 0-0 draw. We shouldn't feel good. But honestly, I thought Tucson could have won that game and should have won that game. I think, both goalkeepers came up big, but Tucson, I think, just played their game, right? Richmond never got to play the style that they wanted.
Elliot, who's been on our show from River City 93, those guys, the question he asked was this for Richmond a point earned or 2 points lost? And I think when you go away and you go to FC Tucson, who has a pretty decent home record overall, and they've dropped the 4 spot at home as well off of on a team just 2 weeks ago. They really. I think they have to say that this is a point earned, right? Your goal has to be, save serve at home. If you get a point on the road every other game, you're probably going to make the playoffs. So they have to really. I think Richmond has to be better at home, and Tucson they have to be a little bit more clinical. And I think basically put more shots on target. I mean, 2 shots on target the whole game at home in front of your home fans. It's not great. I mean,
Right.
just
But since the league doesn't want to acknowledge it, I will shout out to Luke Hosworth. Since we're talking about defenders and center backs doing it big, 3 chances created, 3 tackles, 5 crosses, 3 key passes, and he was the most fouled player in the match. I thought he should have been team of the week, and I thought he created probably the best chances for Tucson, including the one that went off the line from Ackway with the acrobatic header. That was Luke who created that from the get-go. Yeah. So shout out to Hosworth.
And Ackway did make the team of the week from US.
Probably took his spot.
Yeah, could have been. Although TFC 2 had 4 players this week. I think this might be the first week that I've seen 4 players from one team. But maybe
that's because of shortage of games too. We only had 3 games.
That's true. That's a good point. Yeah, that's a very good point. Moving on, today at 11 a.m., which one of those very strange times, up in Toronto at the BMO training facility, Toronto FC2 took on North Texas SC in the MLS2 rivalry match. I don't know what we want to call this. Do we want to call this I don't know. It should have a derby name, I think, especially after a game like today where TFC2 scored 3, but only after a hat trick by North Texas's own Ronaldo. Ronaldo Demara scores in the 9th minute, the 26th minute, and the 27th minute. All 3 of those goals were, I don't know if they were great goals, quite frankly. They were kind of poachers' goals in some respects, but definitely, big moment for Ronaldo. North Texas has the only 2 players to score hat tricks in US League One so far. But in the late in the first half, Griffin Dorsey gets one back for TFC2 off a very nice, well, I don't want to say it was nice, but Perusa was able to, he got an assist, but I think Perusa was not really trying to pass it. I don't know what he was trying to do, just like tip the ball, I guess. But then Matthew Serbley, he got a goal in the 73rd minute after running off of a great counter. Perusa laid the ball off for him on a platter where he was one-on-one with the keeper and slotted it home. And then finally in the 92nd minute, Franco Mingo, after TFC2 was pressing and pressing and pressing, and quite frankly, the last 15 minutes of this game was all TFC2. Endo crosses in the ball from the right-hand side, and Franco Mingo finds himself all alone right in between the right above the penalty spot and hits it home into the bottom left-hand corner. Exciting match, very chippy at the end. The last 25 minutes or so were super chippy. I hope we get a lot more of these games, though. This was a very fun game to watch, Jason.
Oh, yeah. High scoring goals, I think, game in the league so far this year. And I think there hasn't been another game that's had 6 goals. But I want to break down the goals in the hat trick for Damas. First and foremost, how horrible is it for other teams to where the only other hat trick in the league was from Ricardo Pepi? You think you're getting a break because he's playing US Open Cup tonight, and then you got to go ahead and deal with another player who then goes and puts a hat trick in less time than Pepi. So it's wild that North Texas has so much talent on their team. But I also want to give a shout out to Sealy, my Soca Warrior boy. He made a lot of good runs today that just caused havoc in Toronto's back line, especially in the first half. And that was really hard for them to get organized because he kept sneaking through. And that's why Damas had those tap-in goals, because Sealy was making that space. And that's what you saw in the first goal, who Sealy kind of just leaves it off for Damas to finish. That second goal, though, beautiful touch from Damas, and that's what set him up, right? He had that beautiful touch, and then he might have been trying to cross it and it went in. We'll never know because he won't deny that he wasn't shooting for it. But again, I think that Damas setting up his own goal is important. And there's another one in the second half he did where he chested the ball and it went backwards over a defender, and then he just outran 3 defenders. So it's not like Damas is just sitting in front of the goal and tapping it in, right? Like he's setting this up and he's doing a great job doing it. But that goal in that first half goal for Toronto was so important to go in and give them some kind of a chance and hope. If you go into second half down 3-0, I don't know if you can come back, but just having that allows them to kind of have that. And then there was also I think it's the beginning of the second half, Bunk Anderson. Damas is on the break. He's down the line, got everyone beat, and he's crossing it into Sealy. And Bunk Anderson comes in with this sliding save. And if he doesn't, it's an easy goal for North Texas, and that is what saved Toronto FC today. That is a play of the game.
And if he doesn't do it correctly, it's probably a red for denial of goal scoring opportunity.
Absolutely.
So that was in around the 48th minute, I want to say. Yeah, it was very early.
Back-to-back weeks where he's been so important for the team, especially today since Dante Campbell's not playing. And it's funny because Dante Campbell, low-key outside of Tariq Muhammad, might be just as important, if not the most important player of the game. He might not get, or on this team, he might not get as much shine as Tariq, because Tariq also does it offensively. But Dante Campbell, he was missed today severely, and he wasn't playing. I'm guessing he needed rest. The Canadian soccer dude was the one who suggested that. Shout out to him. But yeah, they missed him today dearly. And then they also missed Okello too. I think in the first half, North Texas had too much space in the midfield, and that was allowing for Jada to have those long balls on the dime and allowing those through balls. And if you haven't, go watch in the second half, Jada puts a through ball on the ground that rolls about 60 yards and splits the Toronto's whole team, like not just the defense. I'm talking the midfield, the forwards, and the back line. And so I think Okello was missed today too. But like you were saying at the end, it was all Toronto, right? Like those final 15 minutes. And I even tweeted, I was like, yeah, Toronto's going to score within the next 10 minutes and make this game interesting, because it was just attack after attack. And I think the Tessman sub that came later, that's when it should have happened, because I think losing control of the midfield, and the reason why it happened is because when that attack happens, Jada has to go back and kind of play in that center back position. And he's not able to control from the midfield. In the first half, he got the control straight from the midfield, got to do the long balls, was collecting the balls. He couldn't do that in the second half. So I would have liked to see that Tessman sub go in earlier to give them some physicality, especially when Endo came in and was just an offensive spark for Toronto, right? Like he came in immediately and started creating chances and having crosses. And I think he was a game changer today.
I think for North Texas, their issue was, had they gone into halftime 3-0 down, they might have made some more defensive changes to be able to maybe cope with the pressure that TFC was likely to put on them, because they would have had to score. But instead, I think North Texas thought, oh, we have to get one more. We'll have an opportunity. We were all over them in the first half. And it was almost, I don't want to say an overconfidence, but it seemed like they were pretty confident that they could get another one, and they didn't really change their game plan while TFC made those good tactical decisions to control more of the ball, get the ball a little bit more to the outside, and pressure, and basically not, especially when they were down 3-1. They didn't, until they scored that second goal in the 73rd minute. It almost seemed to me like they didn't care if they conceded another one, but they wanted to get that second one and start to put North Texas on their back foot, and it worked. I mean, quite frankly, it really worked.
And Endo, like I said, 3 chances, 6 crosses, and 86% passing from Endo in 45 minutes was exactly what Toronto needed. And I think the difference today was North Texas didn't really have anybody they can bring off the bench to make that difference that they needed the way that Toronto did. Toronto's stacked at some of their positions, right? Like that midfield's amazing, whether it's Sibley, Griffin Dorsey, who, by the way, involved in all 3 goals today. And when you're involved in all 3 goals, whether you're scoring them or setting them up, you're my player of the game. Simple as that. So shout out to Dorsey. But I think Toronto is a solid playoff team. I'm not like, there's no, oh, well, if this happened. No, I think that right now I would put money on Toronto being in the playoffs. The only thing, especially when you look at their July schedule, they have 5 home games in a row from like July 12th to August 12th. And so they're not, I don't think they're losing at home anytime soon. Something about that place. I don't know if it's the kids that come there.
Yeah, they take 12 points. They take 12 points in those 5 games. It's hard to see how they don't don't get to playoffs. You know, North Texas was obviously missing Brendan Servania and Ricardo Pepi, right? So had I think had Servania been in the match, even if he had come off the bench like in the 60th minute, obviously this is a counterfactual, impossible to prove, but I suspect that he would have been kind of the spark defensively that North Texas needed in order to stop one, if not both of those goals toward the end, because he has been, I always thought of him more as a number 8, but at watching him in the U20 World Cup, I see how he can play as a number 6 very effectively, and has been recently. So today there was another match. I don't know. Were you able to see any of the OCB versus FC Tucson match down at Mount Verde Academy in Central Florida?
I've got to watch a little bit of it. I got to watch Kyle Venner destroying it on the field, but I didn't get to see the ending.
Well, maybe we'll watch it and discuss it a little bit more deeply next week. But I can tell you right now that that Tucson won that match 2-1. OCB scored late. Is that right? So Cox scored in the 44th minute. Ventnor scored in the 45th. And then in the 59th minute, DeMoris scored. So, yeah, Tucson was up 2-0, and there was an OCB tried to make a comeback.
You mean D'Souza scored?
No, DeMoras. He not a player that I know. He came in the 49th minute for Umbuyu. So yeah, I haven't seen the match, so we'll talk about it more next week. We'll start with that match. So we'll put a pin in that for now.
All
right. Previewing this weekend's matches, 4 matches this weekend on Saturday. Richmond versus Chattanooga Red Wolves. Greenville is going to be hosting Lansing Ignite. Forward Madison hosting FC Tucson. And then Tormenta versus OCB. So we have all 6 of the independent teams in action this coming weekend, including matchups between 4 of them. Jason, I'm not going to ask you which match you're going to watch because I know you're going to watch all of them. And this is on Saturday, so
I need a life.
I'll probably wind up watching all of these on Father's Day before the U.S. Match against Chile in the Women's World Cup, which I promised my daughter I'd watch.
Oh,
yeah. So I kind of like this Greenville-Lansing matchup. I think this will again be I think this might be their final matchup of the season. Am I right about that?
It should be. I feel like they've played each other 2 times already.
Yeah, I do too. I think they've had a home and home already. So Greenville hosting. Our friend Chris, will he be there in the front row again? Will I be pointing him out to my kids? And will he be happy? So let's maybe discount this, handicap some of these matches. Let's talk about Greenville Lansing first. This should be an exciting matchup, quite frankly, in my opinion.
I see this matchup either being an open matchup that ends 3-2, or it's going to be 0-0, and I'm going to be mad that's the one I decided to watch live.
I think that's happened before in this.
Yes, it never fails. But I think it's about who's going to finish, right? So Greenville defensively, you're not going to break them down. So Lansing, I think, has an advantage because they have guys that can counter, and I think that's what you probably need to try to do against Greenville. But then at the same time, who's going to finish for Greenville, right? We are, almost halfway through the season, and I don't know who is Greenville's go-to scorer, right? I don't even know, if they have that, or, what their offensive plan is. It was originally the crossing balls, and that's not working. So yeah, like I said, either 0-0 or 2-2, 3-2. I just don't, I don't see Greenville scored 5 goals, right? We're literally like halfway through the season and Greenville scored 5
If there's
goals.
any team that needs a loan from a championship team and getting like the number 2 striker from a championship team, it's Greenville.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Let's go back to Richmond, Chattanooga. Richmond's hosting Chattanooga. Richmond has been up and down at home, but they had a pretty decent match last week against FC Tucson. But you think this is a snoozer? Really?
Huh? I don't know. It's just maybe because it's the recent forms. I don't know. I'm not excited for
Those
it.
could be the most exciting games. I mean, come
It
on.
could be,
Yeah,
right? And this league would be, and Richmond's home, right? So Richmond usually plays
they play
a
better.
lot more exciting at home.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
I do think,
with the exception of that North Texas match, they have not been blown out at home. I mean, and
right.
North Texas can blow anyone out any day. So I'm not gonna use that as a data point for Richmond's form at home.
Yeah, no, I think Richmond wins this, and I think it's because they've got too much talent in the midfield and too physical, and I think that they're going to be able to build up the ball the way they want to because of it. I don't trust Chattanooga's press, and I don't trust them being able to really win in the midfield. So I think you're looking at this being a 2-0-2-1 game.
The thing we didn't talk about with the Richmond Tucson match was that Lockerbie played right back instead of Brandon Troyer, and
And should be there.
yeah, I agree. I mean, I like Brandon Troyer. I think that he's a good player defensively and has something to offer, but I just don't think it's
Yep.
as a right back. Yeah.
Nah, I think Lockerbie solidified that spot, and he's comfortable there. It offers more. He's got the speed to get up and track back, and that's especially what Richmond needs is the tracking back because Maxi Rodriguez can't do it all by himself in the midfield. So yeah, that I'd be shocked if I don't see him there for the rest of the season.
Yep. Forward Madison hosts FC Tucson, so Tucson on the road once again. Forward, didn't have the greatest match this past weekend. Although, like I said, I think they probably deserved a draw or a win just in the way that they played, but they didn't have a good time finishing. Who do you like here? Do you think
You know what?
pull it
I
out
think
with Paolo Jr. and maybe Don Smart scoring some goals?
I think I'm going to call this the first must-win game of the season. I
So
think
Forward has to win.
Ford has to win this game. I feel like Tucson played tonight. They played on the road, right? So they traveled to Orlando and then have to travel to Madison. Um, this is a must win for Ford. They have to get their confidence up. They have to start scoring goals. It's and like I said, some of it's bad luck. But I think Ford right now needs an identity. I think right now that's what they're lacking, right? Like what kind of offense do they have? They're last place in the league right now. They've scored like 4 goals in their past 4 games or something like that. So they have to start finishing and they have to have a spark. Like shout out to that fan base sticking through it, rowdy at every game, traveling well. They deserve it, right? They deserve to get a good home win right now. And because there's such a log jam at that 4th playoff spot, a win puts them right back into contention. But the longer it takes for them to get a win and not a draw, they need a win. They're going to be sorry if they don't.
Yeah, you have to save serve at home, right? And finally, Tormenta versus OCB. OCB, one of the probably good form recently until this week, until today, but generally speaking, a very inconsistent team this year against one of the league's best. South Georgia Tormenta. South Georgia Tormenta at home, good atmosphere. They'll probably have 4,000 plus fans in the crowd, hooping and hollering for them. I got to give this one to Tormenta. I think OCB can drop a couple of goals, but I think this ends up being another high scoring game. I mean, maybe it's even like a 4-2 match or something, and we get another goal game.
I 100% agree with you. Last Friday, today, and then this weekend, Saturday, Orlando has to play. They are going to be exhausted. Meanwhile, Tormenta has just been kicking back, chilling, didn't have a game last week because of the weather in Chattanooga. So I think they're fresh, they're relaxed. And because of that, I think that second half is when the floodgates open. That's when Charlie Dennis especially likes to be in that pivot and move up more and Alex Morel is just going to tire Orlando out in that first half, running everywhere. And I think you're right. I think this is going to end up being like a 4-2 game.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I didn't look what was going on with Orlando and their Open Cup match, but I know both Orlando and FC Tucson didn't have players going for them today because they got called up to their first teams. So I know there were a number of them. I didn't look closely at who they were and how many. So there could be some players maybe who sit on the bench for OCB that don't actually play. So it's not. So maybe they'll have a few players at least with fresh legs, but we'll have to discount that a little bit more, and we'll discuss that a little bit more next week. So with that, let's go on to some fan questions before we talk a little bit about Team of the Week. So we have 2 fan questions tonight. The first one is from Dutiful Purple. Dutifully Purple. So they're fully purple and dutiful.
Dude, yeah, sure.
So both, sure. Overall, what is our thoughts on fan engagement? Jason, how about you start off with that one?
Yeah, so like I was saying, shout out first foremost to Richmond and Ford. Fans consistently coming out, big numbers, even if the team's not necessarily playing well, at that time, staying with it loud on television. This is easily one of my favorite leagues to watch on ESPN Plus because you can hear the fans going off the whole game. You can hear the drums. It reminds you of being at the game and actually feeling like you're a part of it. And I think, that's across the league too, right? Tucson, they draw well. And I also like that, you have the kids coming in for Toronto for their 11 a.m. games or their after school games.
They were pretty they were only 500. There were 525 people apparently at that match today, and it sounded
they were all kids.
More. Yeah, but it sounded like a lot more on the broadcast.
Oh, yeah, it sounded like a Katy Perry concert. It was unbelievable how loud those kids can get. I kind of only want kids to come to my job or wherever I'm at to cheer for me because it sounds like a lot of them, and it's a great confidence builder. They act like they really love that team. Like Toronto doesn't win today, or Toronto doesn't tie today and have that 3-goal comeback if it's not for the kids. I'll say it. I'll call it right now. But I do think that the fan engagement is awesome. I do think that the teams are engaging with the fans as well, right? And so shout out to like Lansing, for instance. They're doing tickets to where they're doing discounted tickets, and then half of the proceeds go to local businesses, and that's what it's all about, right? And so you have a lot of the supporters group doing Pride stuff this month, and those proceeds are also going to local charities, and it's just I love to see that. And so the fan engagement, the fact that they're working with the teams, and the fact that, you can hear it and you can see it. It's not just something that, a team throws up and tries to sell merch for. That's what this league's all about. And I love seeing that.
So I have a friend who lives outside of Detroit, not in Lansing, but near there. And he actually asked me, he said, hey, what's this Ignite thing going on? Like I keep on hearing about it from some friends of mine. And so I think that there is, very good fan engagement, particularly with the independent sides. There's obviously Chattanooga still has this weird thing going on, but even they have, decent turnstiles and people coming to the matches. So it seems to me that the teams themselves are trying to really take local soccer to heart and are able to get people out there. I can say from the media side, just from our side, the teams have been very outgoing to us, the independent teams in particular. I mean, look, this was just so super nice of South Georgia Tormenta to give me a birthday present. It was very unexpected and appreciated. They've been great, so we've done, and Jason, you and I have done, many interviews with coaches and players, and they've always, they're trying to get out there, right? They're trying to build this league very organically, and they're doing everything that they need to do that. So it's going to be a slow process, but hopefully it continues to grow, and they'll keep that up.
And Weston was talking about it on Capital Combustion. He went to the Ford Madison game, and so for that to be, the rivalry, he said that the treatment from the supporters groups for Ford, Flock, and LeBar and all of them was just amazing, and it was welcoming, and it just helped the experience, and that's what you like to see, right? Because at the end of the game, at the end of the day, like it's a game. We're supporting our teams, but it shouldn't be all this drama back and forth about, whose team's better or, being mean to each other for no reason. And I think that's going to be a big part of growing this league.
So no flamingos hitting cars with
No,
spark plug?
no, no, not. Ira, you might have a second job waiting for you. Lansing, hit him up. Aaron, give Ira a call. He's got some ideas.
No, this was your team. I'll talk to you about it after the show, but that was a Philadelphia Union New York Red Bulls reference.
Yeah.
Okay. Jackson Popkin asks in our Yahoo chat. By the way, we usually go live on Wednesday nights at 9:00. So if you want to catch us on YouTube, please check out our Twitter feed, and you'll be able to find a link to watch us live and make fun of my scarves or glasses or whatever. Any glaring reason why Madison is in such poor form?
I'm going to quote the great Chris Ashley. Ford is a team with no forwards. They just can't finish the ball, right? I don't think they're necessarily doing anything wrong. I think defensively, you still got Connor Tobin with the most clearances in the league. He had an amazing interception this past weekend where it was easily going to be a goal one-on-one in the 51st minute if you want to go back and watch that. So defensively, I think they're fine. I think Paulo and Nunez and Giro's been coming off the bench doing well. So I think the talent's there. I just don't think they have a finisher, right? And like we were mentioning earlier, Ford, they rely on someone different, it seems, to finish every game, right? Like sometimes it's a Don Smart game, sometimes it's a Paulo game, and that works for a little bit. But at the same time, you do need to have a game plan, right? You do need to have I know I'm going to cross this because I know Mason Toye is there and he's great at heading the ball, or I know I need to pull this back to the top of the box where Paulo can shoot it. And if there's so many different players that are up top and so many different, styles, you don't get that. And I think that's what's hurting Ford right now.
I wonder, do you think that Paulo Jr. maybe instead of playing on the left wing should maybe play more as a striker? I think he could do it. I think he could be that number 9 that Forward needs.
But I think he's so important to come back to the midfield and get the ball, and what he offers defensively is so good. You don't want to take him too far away from that action. I think that's
maybe
why.
Instead of playing the 4-2-3-1, 4-3-3 kind of setup that they've been doing, maybe they need to go to a classic 4-4-2, right? And he can play as that number 10, come back when he needs to, or make the diagonal runs, which sometimes he does and is so dangerous doing when he's able to get service and those through balls, because he is quick and we know that he can finish. We've seen some spectacular finishes from him this season.
Yep. Yeah, I agree.
To me, like, you get him more central and maybe you're more dangerous.
Yeah, I think him and Nunez right now are kind of playing the same way, but I would like to see him more central. But then what do you do with Nunez, right? Because I don't know how good Nunez is going to be on the wing, and I think that's where they have that issue right now of who's creating.
Or it's someone else, right? You play that 4-4-2, and you have both of them central. And
I would love to see
off each other. Yeah.
Yeah, but I also think JC Banks, he's at his best when he's that pivot in the middle too. So it's like it's a double-edged sword. It's good to have these creative players in the middle, but then it's just where do you put them and who's actually finishing those creative chances.
Yeah, that's fair. Last question for this one, again from our YouTube chat, from Lauren Mercer. What is something that you think Coach Bulow, who is the coach of the Richmond Kickers and has been interviewed on the show before, needs to change? So this is, probably, this is an interesting question because I feel like they have the pieces. It's just and they're trying to play a specific system and game style, and for a variety of reasons in some games it's not working because they're either outpressed or they don't get into that rhythm that I mentioned before. So when Richmond gets into their rhythm and they're able to pass 5 passes, all of a sudden they're at the top of the 18 taking a shot or hitting a ball inside to chin, they look very dangerous. Other times they just don't get into that rhythm, and when they don't, they just seem out of it. I wonder, is this just a time thing, Jason, or do you think that there is something specific that Coach Bulow needs to consider in order?
So I was going to actually bring that up. First and foremost, I'm not gonna tell somebody how to do their job. I don't want anyone to come to my job and smack the broom out my hand. So I'm just gonna say,
Hold on a second, Jason. We're podcasters and we're talking heads, and we know the game pretty well. Clearly we're not coaches, but
yeah,
you guys got guys like Matt Doyle and David Goss, who, by the way, called today's Toronto North Texans
he
game.
did,
Shout
and
out to Dave Goss.
he somehow managed to squeeze in Mod Podge, which I'm sure he is secretly ecstatic about.
Right, but Matt Doyle doesn't know any more than you or me, yet he seems to have some respect within Major League Soccer. So there's no reason
Yeah.
why
I,
if there is something that you see, there's no reason that we shouldn't be able to
I
go
I
find.
do wonder about the time. I think so. I think his whole thing is he's saying, and he's seen glimpse of it too, right? I think it was against Greenville. They had a 40-second, 50-second spell to where they got trapped in their own corner, just did quick passes and just passed through the Greenville press, right? And it was absolutely beautiful. It led to a shot that was saved by Dallas J, but it was exactly what Bulow wants and exactly, I think, how he wants the team to play. But the issue is that has to be more consistent. And we're almost halfway through this season. And yes, they're still they're thankfully still contending for that last playoff spot. But like you said, at what point do you finally draw the line and go, you know what? This isn't working. We need to either start playing down the side. We need to start, having quicker balls through the middle, or we need to play long balls and have Chin and Jackson bring them down. I don't know when that line is, but I wonder if Bulow has by week 15, if this isn't working, we're switching it up.
Have a plan B. Yeah, I think that's dangerous too, because the first couple of games, whenever you switch something up, you end up with a lot of confusion.
Sometimes you just got to ride it till the wheels fall off. If it works, it works, and if it doesn't, you did what you wanted to do, and it didn't work out. So you can't have any regrets or shame in that.
I think the other thing with Richmond is that when you have a couple of their attackers are on that night, they just look way more dangerous, right? Because when you have like Mwapwe or Chin, if they're on and they're doing their job, then you wind up with a much more coherent attack, and you're able to get it out to the sides, and then have Gallardo and a couple and other people run off of them, right? Yeah. So it's kind of those off the ball things that I think they need to be a little bit more consistent with, because when they're able to open up and make space for Joe Gallardo to get into, or when Hughes is on the field, for example, he can make those line breaking passes and get the ball to one of the wings, and have either Chin or Mopway run onto them. They are very dangerous. So I just think they need to be more consistent about that, and consistency just takes time. So I disagree with you, actually. I don't think that they should change, or could, or should change.
And that's why you're a coach and I'm not. You see, my game plan would be to do the Serginho flick to De Souza and just do that with Lockerbie, right? Just send him as far, up the field as possible and outrun everybody.
Well, I do actually think Lockerbie being out there instead of Brandon Troyer, that will help them, because that, if you look at the last couple of games, all of the offense out of the fullbacks all came from Scotty Thompson and not really from Brandon Troyer, right? So I think now that you have danger on both sides, teams they'll have to spread out and not say, okay, we can overload on our right on Richmond's left, because we know that Scotty Thompson is going to come down there, and now now there's risk and danger on both sides, and they'll be able to combine and probably overlap with the wingers. So Jason, any final thoughts?
I want to give a shout out to Alassane Diop for Orlando, just because I think he did exactly what he needed to do. He had like 5 interceptions, 4 tackles, was breaking up everything that came his way, and that allowed Orlando to beat Ford. Like I said, Ford never was able to really get into the groove because of people like him and De Souza stopping all those attacks. So I just want to give him a shout out. He didn't make the team of the week, which is why I wanted to give him a shout out.
So that's someone who you think that was deserving. Anyone else deserving
Absolutely.
team of the week that didn't make it?
Yeah, I talked about him earlier, but
so I have a question. Do we need a bench for the team of the week? Like,
I would like that. I would like
maybe we should make our own bench. Like, who's the 7, the 1 goalie and the 6 field players who should have made the team of the week and didn't.
One player I do like that made team of the week, FC Tucson's new player Batista. I like, first and foremost, that man is 9'12". I don't know if you've seen him. That is a gigantic individual. I don't know if it's because of everyone who's playing happens to be 5'11", but he just looked twice as big as anyone else. But shout out to him making the team of the week because of his defensive, game or whatever, I guess. He's making my team of the week, though, because that man is about that action. And as soon as he saw that there was some conflict going on in a late tackle, I think it was from Joey G. I can't remember who the late tackle was from. He sprinted 70 yards downfield to get into, it was from Eckenrode. That's who it was. Eckenrode subbed in and had a late tackle, and he sprinted 70 yards to get into Eckenrode's face and tell him, okay, we got a problem. Let's see how you feel after the game. And that is somebody that Eckenrode kept it, very cool. He was like, oh, I'm not worried about you. I would have been peeing my pants if a man that big is sprinting full speed at me to be physical and get in my face. Nah, shout out to Batista for holding that team down, though. I love that.
There you go. Jason, where can everyone find you?
Home Sweet Soccer.
And you can find me at Ira Jersey on Twitter. Thank you for listening. Please rate, review us wherever you get your podcasts, and check out bgn.fm for all of the great soccer podcasts and other written content covering USL League One, USL Championship, USL League Two, NWSL, MLS, and much, much more. Thank you to our sponsor, Golden Goal Press, the best choice to get your custom shirts, hats, mugs, and other items just for yourself or your organization. Check out their amazing products at a fraction of the price of other places at goldengoalpress.com. And thanks to Roughneck Scarves, the one that I'm wearing right now. And by the way, it's making my neck very, very sweaty, which is the official scarf provider of USL, Major League Soccer, and US Soccer. Get your custom scarves for your group or team at roughneckscarves.com. Go US Women's National Team and have a great Gold Cup. Jason, any last word?
I think I peed myself a little bit thinking about Batista running full speed at me. Yeah, not something I want.
All right. Good night, everyone. Thanks very much for listening, and please hit us up on Twitter. We'd love for you to engage with us. We're really try to be nice people. I mean, I do our best.
Does. I don't.
Y'all, well, Jason just spicy.
Yeah, y'all deserve all the spice I give.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a good week.